It's sitting in your kitchen right now. You probably bought it because the label said heart healthy. Maybe your doctor mentioned it years ago. Maybe you switched to it from butter because you heard it was the smarter choice. Maybe you've been cooking with it for 20, 30, even 40 years, completely convinced you were doing the right thing for your heart, your cholesterol, your health, and that's exactly what makes this so difficult to talk about. Because the oil I'm referring to today isn't some obscure ingredient you've never heard of. It's not something hiding in processed food that you'd never knowingly consume. It is one of the most widely used cooking oils in the entire United States. It lines the shelves of every grocery store in America. It sits in the kitchens of millions of seniors who believe, genuinely, sincerely believe, that they are protecting themselves by using it. But here is what the latest research is showing us, and what most people over 60 are never told. This oil, when consumed regularly over years and decades, may contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body. It may disrupt the delicate fatty acid balance your brain depends on to function well. And in older adults specifically, that disruption has been linked in multiple studies to accelerated cognitive decline, increased cardiovascular risk, and a higher likelihood of developing the kind of systemic inflammation that silently drives some of the most feared diseases of aging. I know that's a lot to take in. I know it may contradict everything you've been told, but I've seen what happens in my patients. Real people, good people, careful people, and I can no longer stay quiet about this. I'm Dr. William, and for more than 2 decades, I've specialized in helping older adults navigate the increasingly complicated landscape of healthy aging. I've sat with thousands of patients who were doing everything they thought was right and still watching their health slowly decline. And time and again, when I looked closely at the full picture of their daily lives, small, overlooked details turned out to matter enormously. What you cook with is one of those details. In my years of practice, I've come to believe that the cooking oil conversation is one of the most important and most neglected nutritional discussions we can have with seniors. Because unlike a medication you take once a day, cooking oil is something that enters your body multiple times, every single day, often at high heat, in a form that your body must process and either use constructively or fight against. Over decades, that daily exposure adds up in ways that don't show up on a single blood test or a single doctor's visit. They show up gradually, in memory, in energy, in inflammation markers, in cardiovascular function, in the quiet, creeping changes that too many seniors accept as inevitable features of getting older. Today, I want to show you that some of those changes are not inevitable. Some of them have a source, and some of them may be sitting in a bottle on your kitchen counter right now. The oil I'm talking about is vegetable oil, and more specifically, the category of highly processed seed oils that includes corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and the most widely used of all, canola oil and generic vegetable oil blends. Let me explain exactly what these oils are, what happens to them before they reach your kitchen, and what the emerging science says about what they may be doing inside your body, especially after 60. First, let me tell you about a patient I'll call Robert. Robert was 71 years old, a retired engineer from Michigan, meticulous and methodical in everything he did, including his diet. He had switched from butter to vegetable oil in the mid-1980s when the American health establishment declared saturated fat the enemy of the heart. He used it for everything: sautéing vegetables, frying eggs, baking, salad dressings. He was proud of his discipline. Robert came to me not because of heart problems, his cholesterol numbers were actually decent, but because his wife was worried about his memory. Small things at first: forgetting where he'd put his keys, missing appointments he'd always kept religiously, struggling to find words mid-sentence in a way that felt new and frightening to both of them. His brain scans showed early signs of what his neurologist called mild cognitive impairment, a condition that sits on the spectrum between normal aging and early dementia. His inflammatory markers were elevated. His omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, something I'll explain in detail in a moment, was significantly out of balance. Robert had done everything the mainstream health advice of his generation had told him to do. He had followed the rules faithfully for 40 years. And yet something had gone wrong. We made changes, including, critically, changing what he cooked with. 12 months later, his inflammatory markers had improved. His wife told me his sharpness had returned in ways she hadn't expected. He was finding words again. He was present again. Robert looked at me during one of our follow-up visits and said, "I feel like I got some of myself back." That is why I'm having this conversation with you today. Now let me give you the science, in plain English, because you deserve to understand exactly what is happening inside your body. The story begins with two types of essential fatty acids, fats that your body absolutely cannot make on its own and must get from food. They are called omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids. Both are essential. Both serve important functions, but they work in opposition to each other in one critical way. Omega-3 fatty acids are fundamentally anti-inflammatory. They support brain cell membrane health, help regulate mood and cognition, protect blood vessel walls, and support healthy circulation. Your brain is approximately 60% fat, and a significant portion of that fat is made up of an omega-3 called DHA, docosahexaenoic acid. DHA is essential for the communication between brain cells. It keeps your neural connections flexible, responsive, and efficient. Omega-6 fatty acids, on the other hand, when consumed in excess, are fundamentally pro-inflammatory. They support the body's inflammatory response, which is important and necessary in the right amounts. Inflammation is how your body heals injuries and fights infection. You need some omega-6, but when omega-6 consumption becomes dramatically disproportionate to omega-3 consumption, the body's inflammatory systems can shift into a state of chronic low-grade activation. And chronic low-grade inflammation, maintained quietly over years and decades, is now understood by researchers to be one of the central drivers of cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, arthritis, metabolic dysfunction, and accelerated cellular aging. Here's where cooking oils enter the picture in a critical way. For most of human history, our ancestors consumed omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in a ratio of roughly 1:1, or at most 4:1. Our bodies evolved around that balance. Our brains developed around that balance. Our inflammatory regulation systems were calibrated for that balance. The average American today consumes these fatty acids in a ratio of approximately 15:1, omega-6 to omega-3. Some estimates put it even higher, at 20:1 or beyond. That is a catastrophic shift from what our biology was designed for. And the single largest dietary driver of that shift is the explosion in consumption of highly processed seed and vegetable oils, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, and their relatives, which are extraordinarily high in omega-6 fatty acids and contain virtually no omega-3s. But here's where things get even more concerning, and this is something most people truly never hear. The problem with these oils isn't just their fatty acid composition, it's what happens to them during industrial processing and again during cooking. To extract oil from corn, soybeans, or canola seeds, manufacturers use a process involving very high heat, chemical solvents, often hexane, which is a petroleum-derived chemical, and multiple stages of refinement, deodorization, and bleaching. By the time the oil reaches your grocery store shelf in that clear plastic bottle, it has been subjected to industrial processes that would be unrecognizable to any kitchen in human history. During this processing, the delicate polyunsaturated fatty acids in these oils are partially oxidized, meaning they begin to break down and degrade. Some researchers use the term pre-oxidized to describe the state of these oils even before you open the bottle. Now here's the part that concerns me most as a physician caring for older adults. When you heat these oils, when you pour them into a pan and turn on the burner, the oxidation process accelerates dramatically. Polyunsaturated fats are chemically unstable at high temperatures. When they degrade under heat, they produce a class of compounds called aldehydes and other oxidative byproducts that, when consumed regularly, may contribute to cellular damage, DNA damage, and neurological inflammation. Research from institutions including the University of Minnesota and published in peer-reviewed journals has raised serious questions about the long-term effects of regularly consuming these heat-degraded compounds, particularly for older adults whose cellular repair mechanisms are already less efficient than they were at 30 or 40. Think of it this way. Imagine your car engine running on slightly degraded fuel every single day. The engine might run for a while, but over years, the accumulated damage takes a toll that clean fuel would not. Your brain cells, your neurons, are extraordinarily sensitive to oxidative damage. They don't regenerate the way skin cells or blood cells do. Once they're damaged, the consequences can be lasting. And the brain of a 65-year-old is more vulnerable to oxidative stress than the brain of a 35-year-old. Now, I want to pause here because I can already hear some of you thinking, but Dr. William, I've been told for decades that these oils lower cholesterol. Doesn't that make them heart healthy? This is one of the most important misconceptions I encounter in my practice, and I want to address it directly. It is true that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated vegetable oils can lower LDL cholesterol numbers on a blood test. That part is accurate. But here's what most people don't know. The relationship between LDL cholesterol numbers and actual cardiovascular outcomes is far more complex than a single number suggests. The type of LDL matters. Small, dense, oxidized LDL particles are significantly more dangerous than large, buoyant ones, and the oxidized byproducts produced by heating vegetable oils may actually contribute to the oxidation of LDL in your bloodstream, meaning these oils could be lowering your cholesterol number while simultaneously making the cholesterol that remains more dangerous. Furthermore, multiple large randomized controlled trials, including the famous Sydney Diet Heart Study and the Minnesota Coronary Experiment, whose full data was not published for decades, found that groups who replaced saturated fat with vegetable oils saw their cholesterol numbers drop, but did not see improved cardiovascular outcomes. In some analyses, the vegetable oil groups had worse outcomes. I'm not telling you that saturated fat is innocent or that butter is a superfood. The nutritional picture is nuanced and individual. What I am telling you is that the vegetable oil equals heart healthy narrative is far less settled than it was presented to most Americans, and far less settled than most seniors were led to believe. And when you add the brain health dimension, the omega-6 imbalance dimension, and the oxidative stress dimension to that already complicated picture, the case for routinely cooking with highly processed seed oils, especially for people over 60 DOS, becomes very difficult to defend. This is where many seniors make a critical mistake. They see "made with vegetable oil" on a food label and feel reassured. They choose the vegetable oil margarine over butter. They reach for the corn oil because it was recommended by a health authority 30 years ago, and they've never heard a reason to reconsider. The mistake isn't stupidity. It isn't carelessness. It's loyalty to advice that was given with good intentions, but has not kept pace with what science has learned since. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call Mary. Mary was 69, a retired nurse from Texas, which meant she was perhaps more medically informed than most of my patients. She understood cholesterol, blood pressure, medication management. She was not someone who ignored her health. She was someone who had been carefully following the best available advice for 40 years. When she came to me, she was struggling with what she described as brain fog, a persistent mental cloudiness that made her feel like she was thinking through cotton wool. She was also dealing with significant joint inflammation, fatigue that didn't respond to rest, and a low-grade anxiety that she attributed to getting older. When I reviewed her diet thoroughly, I found she was cooking almost exclusively with a popular vegetable oil blend, multiple times a day, every single day, often at high heat. Her omega-3 intake was minimal. Her inflammatory markers told the story her symptoms suggested. I want to be careful here because Mary's situation was multifactorial, meaning multiple things contributed to how she was feeling. But one of the changes we made was shifting her cooking oils entirely. We also increased her dietary omega-3s through food sources and supplementation under supervision. Over the following 4 months, her joint pain decreased significantly, her energy improved, and the brain fog, that persistent, frustrating mental cloudiness, began to lift. She told me it felt like someone opened a window. "I thought that was just aging," she said. Again, that phrase. "I thought that was just aging. It isn't always, and you deserve to know that." So let's talk about what to use instead, because this is where the conversation becomes genuinely exciting. The good news is that there are several cooking oils with strong scientific support for cardiovascular and brain health in older adults. that are widely available, reasonably priced, and easy to cook with. Extra virgin olive oil is at the top of my list, and it has been for years. The Mediterranean diet research is among the most robust in all of nutritional science, and extra virgin olive oil is its cornerstone. It is rich in oleocanthal, a natural compound with anti-inflammatory properties similar in mechanism, though vastly smaller in dose, to ibuprofen. It is rich in polyphenols that protect LDL from oxidation. It supports healthy blood vessel function, healthy blood pressure, and emerging research suggests meaningful protective effects for brain health and cognitive longevity. Extra virgin olive oil is best used at low to medium heat for sautéing, dressings, drizzling over food after cooking. It is not ideal for very high heat cooking, where its smoke point limits it somewhat, though its antioxidant content actually provides more heat stability than its smoke point number suggests. Avocado oil is my recommendation for higher heat cooking, roasting, stir-frying, searing. It has one of the highest smoke points of any natural oil. It is rich in heart-healthy monounsaturated fats, similar to olive oil, and it contains lutein, a carotenoid with documented benefits for eye health, something increasingly important for seniors. Coconut oil, used in moderation, has a place for certain cooking applications. It is more stable at high heat than seed oils and does not produce the same oxidative byproducts. The saturated fat discussion around coconut oil is nuanced. It raises both LDL and HDL, and the type of saturated fat it contains behaves differently metabolically than the saturated fat in red meat. I recommend using it occasionally rather than as a primary cooking fat, and discussing it with your doctor if you have significant cardiovascular concerns. Butter and ghee from grass-fed sources contain vitamin K2, CLA, and butyrate, compounds with genuine health relevance, and are far more heat-stable than polyunsaturated seed oils. Used thoughtfully and in reasonable quantities, they are not the cardiovascular villains they were portrayed as for decades. The simple rule I give my patients: the less industrial processing an oil has undergone, the more likely it is to be compatible with your biology. Olive oil pressed from olives, avocado oil pressed from avocados, butter churned from cream. These are foods your body has evolutionary experience with. Hexane extracted, bleached, deodorized seed oil is not. Before I give you your action steps, let me also mention something about reading labels, because this matters enormously for seniors who eat any packaged or prepared food. Vegetable oils, particularly soybean oil and corn oil, are hiding in an enormous percentage of processed and restaurant foods. Salad dressings, crackers, bread, frozen meals, fast food, restaurant cooking across virtually every cuisine category, even foods marketed as healthy, protein bars, whole grain snacks, plant-based products, frequently contain these oils as their primary fat source. You cannot eliminate them entirely unless you cook every meal from scratch. But becoming aware of them, reducing them where you can control it, and replacing your home cooking oils with better alternatives is a meaningful and achievable step. Even a 50% reduction in your daily seed oil exposure, combined with increased omega-3 intake, can begin to shift your body's inflammatory balance in a positive direction over weeks and months. Here are your clear, practical action steps for this week. First, open your kitchen cabinet and look at what you're cooking with. Read the label. If it says vegetable oil, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, or canola oil, consider replacing it. You don't need to throw it out dramatically the way I described. Just finish what you have and purchase something better next time. Second, purchase a good quality extra virgin olive oil for everyday cooking and dressings. Look for oils in dark glass bottles. Light degrades olive oil, and check for a harvest date rather than just an expiration date. Fresh olive oil is meaningfully better than old olive oil. Third, if you cook frequently at high heat, add avocado oil to your kitchen. It will handle the heat that olive oil is less suited for. Fourth, begin increasing your omega-3 intake through food. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, mackerel, anchovies, 2 to 3 times per week is one of the most powerful dietary changes an older adult can make for brain and cardiovascular health. Walnuts, flax seeds, and chia seeds also provide plant-based omega-3s. Fifth, talk with your doctor or a registered dietitian about your overall fat intake and whether an omega-3 supplement might be appropriate for you. Fish oil supplementation has a strong evidence base for cardiovascular and cognitive support in older adults, but the quality of supplements varies enormously, so professional guidance matters. And I want to ask you something. Drop a comment below and tell me, what oil have you been cooking with most of your life? I read every comment, and your answers genuinely help me understand what topics matter most to the people watching. Your experience matters here. I want to close today the same way I always try to close, not with fear, but with clarity and genuine hope. The human brain is remarkable in its resilience. The cardiovascular system responds to positive change at any age. Inflammation is not a permanent sentence. It is a process that can be modulated, reduced, and redirected with the right inputs. You are not too old to benefit from better information. You are not too old to make changes that matter. The research on neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and regenerate, is genuinely encouraging even into the 7th, 8th, and 9th decades of life. Robert got some of himself back. Mary's window opened, and thousands of patients I have worked with over the years have discovered that what felt like inevitable decline was actually a response to something changeable. What you put in your body matters. What you cook with matters. The oil in your pan, repeated thousands of times over decades, is not a trivial detail. It is a daily message to your cells, your vessels, your brain. And that message can be a healing one or a harmful one. You now have the information to make it a healing one. Now, if today's conversation has you thinking more carefully about what's in your kitchen, and I hope it has, then I think you are going to want to watch what I've put together next. Because here is something that surprises almost every patient I share it with. There is a common breakfast habit that tens of millions of American seniors follow every single morning, something considered completely normal, even virtuous, that may be silently raising their blood sugar, stressing their pancreas, and contributing to insulin resistance in a way that builds invisibly over years. It is not what you think, it is not obvious, and it is not something most doctors bring up in a standard appointment. In the next video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what this morning habit is, what it does to your metabolism after 60, who is most at risk, and what you can swap it for to start your day in a way that genuinely supports your energy, your blood sugar, and your long-term metabolic health. Some of my patients have told me that changing this one morning habit changed how they felt for the rest of the day, every day. After everything you've learned today, I think you'll want to hear it. Go ahead and click it now. I'll see you there.